The company Christmas party was in full swing when Michael Carson noticed her. Not the woman, though he would notice her soon enough, but the little girl sitting alone at a corner table, her legs swinging beneath her chair, her eyes fixed on the chaos of adults laughing and clinking glasses around her. She looked about 7 or 8, with honey blonde hair pulled back in a neat braid and a green velvet dress that suggested someone had taken great care with her appearance. But what struck Michael was the stillness in her face. Not sadness exactly, something more like resignation. He watched as a waiter passed by, and the girl didn't flinch, didn't turn, didn't react at all to the crash of a dropped tray nearby. Without thinking, Michael crossed the room. He crouched down to her level, caught her eye, and signed a simple greeting. "Hello." The girl's face transformed. Her eyes went wide, then bright, and then slowly, like sunrise, she smiled. From across the ballroom, Emma Hayes watched a stranger make her daughter smile for the first time all evening. She set down her champagne glass and began walking toward them. Michael Carson had not planned to attend the Whitmore Financial holiday party. As a mid-level analyst who had been with the firm for just under 2 years, he existed in that invisible middle ground between the junior staff who treated these events as networking opportunities and the senior executives who treated them as obligations. He had only come because his son, 9-year-old Oliver, was spending the weekend with his grandparents in Connecticut, and the alternative was another Friday night alone in his apartment, reheating leftover Thai food and pretending he wasn't lonely. The silence of his apartment had grown heavier in recent months, pressing against him like something physical. He had grown used to it, the empty chair at breakfast, the 2 quiet evenings, the way his voice sounded strange to his own ears when he finally spoke after hours of silence. The divorce had been finalized 18 months ago, and Michael had grown accustomed to the quiet. He and Sarah had married young, too young. They would both admit now, and when Oliver was diagnosed with hearing loss at age 3, the stress had exposed every fault line in their foundation. Sarah hadn't left because of Oliver's disability. She had left because Michael had thrown himself so completely into learning sign language, into researching schools and therapies, into becoming the father Oliver needed, that he had forgotten to remain the husband Sarah wanted. He didn't blame her for leaving. He blamed himself for not noticing she was gone long before she packed her bags. Now, Michael lived for his weekends with Oliver, for their silent conversations over breakfast, for the way his son's face lit up when Michael signed something funny. The rest of his life, the spreadsheets, the conference calls, the empty apartment was just the scaffolding that held those precious moments in place. He had learned to find contentment in small things. The first cup of coffee in the morning, the satisfaction of a problem solved at work, the sound of his son's laughter on video calls. But contentment wasn't happiness, and Michael had stopped expecting happiness a long time ago. Emma Hayes had built her life on control. As Chief Operating Officer of Whitmore Financial, she managed a department of 200 people, oversaw quarterly budgets that exceeded most small countries' GDPs, and maintained a reputation for being both fair and formidable. Her colleagues respected her, her subordinates feared her slightly, which she considered appropriate. Her competitors underestimated her exactly once. At 33, she had achieved everything she had set out to achieve. And if her personal life was somewhat emptier than her professional one, well, that was the price of ambition. Or so she told herself on the nights when her apartment felt too large, too quiet, too perfect in its emptiness. Lily had arrived in Emma's life 3 years ago, a foster placement that had become permanent when it became clear that the girl's biological parents would never be fit to care for her. Emma had not planned to become a mother. She had not planned to fall in love with a silent, watchful child who communicated through a language Emma didn't speak, but Lily had looked at her with those serious grey eyes, and Emma had felt something crack open in her chest, something she had spent years walling off. She adopted Lily formally on a Tuesday in March and promptly hired 3 different ASL tutors, none of whom could make the signs feel natural in Emma's hands. She was fluent in French and Italian. She could read financial statements in Japanese, but American Sign Language defeated her, its grammar alien, its spatial relationships counterintuitive, its emotional expressiveness at odds with her carefully cultivated composure. Every conversation with her daughter felt like speaking through a translator, and Emma knew she knew that Lily felt the distance between them. She saw it in her daughter's patient corrections, in the way Lily simplified her signs when talking to Emma, in the flicker of something that might have been disappointment that crossed her face when Emma struggled to understand even basic phrases. It haunted her, that distance. It kept her awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake, not in adopting Lily. Never that, but in believing she could be the mother Lily deserved. Michael looked up to find a woman standing over him. Her expression caught somewhere between gratitude and suspicion. She was striking tall with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than his monthly rent. But it was her eyes that held him. They were the same grey as the little girl's, and they held the same watchfulness, the same careful assessment. You know, sign language, she said. It wasn't a question. Michael stood suddenly aware of how rumpled his suit was compared to her elegance, how out of place he must look next to this polished woman in her designer gown. My son is hard of hearing. I learned when he was 3. The woman's face shifted, something softening in her expression, a crack in the armor she wore so visibly that Michael wondered if she knew it was there. I'm Emma Hayes. This is my daughter, Lily. Michael introduced himself. And then, because Lily was watching them with obvious curiosity, he turned back to the girl and signed. My name is Michael. What's your name? Lily. The girl finger spelled carefully. Then with a shy glance at her mother, she added, most people don't know how to talk to me. Michael felt something twist in his chest. He knew that feeling, had watched Oliver navigate it countless times. The loneliness of existing in a world that moved too fast for silence. A world that didn't pause to let you catch up. He signed back. Well, I think we should change that, don't you? Lily's smile returned brighter than before. From the corner of his eye, Michael saw Emma watching them, her expression unreadable. But she didn't look away. And when Lily tugged on her mother's hand and signed something Michael couldn't quite catch, Emma's face transformed with a look of such naked longing that Michael had to look away. He recognized that look. He had worn it himself in the early days when communication with Oliver had felt impossible. He had never expected to see it on someone else's face, and certainly not on the face of a woman who seemed so completely in control of everything around her. The party continued around them, but somehow Michael and Emma found themselves at the same table with Lily settled between them like a small, satisfied bridge. She had claimed Michael's attention with the single-minded focus of a child who had finally found someone who spoke her language, peppering him with questions about his son, his job, whether he liked Christmas, whether he had a dog, whether he preferred chocolate or vanilla ice cream. Michael answered each one carefully, signing with the patient clarity he had learned from years with Oliver, occasionally interpreting for Emma when Lily's signs came too fast for her mother to follow. He noticed how Emma leaned forward each time he translated, how her fingers moved slightly as if she were trying to memorize the shapes. She was trying so hard. That was what struck him most. Not her beauty, not her position, not the obvious wealth that surrounded her like a second skin. It was the effort she poured into every interaction with her daughter. The way she refused to look away even when Lily's signs made no sense to her. The way she kept trying to respond in her broken, halting ASL. She wasn't cold at all. Michael realized she was terrified. Terrified of failing this small person who depended on her, terrified of the gap between them that she couldn't seem to close. He recognized that terror. He had lived it himself. In the early days after Oliver's diagnosis, when every sign felt clumsy, and every conversation felt like a test he was failing. Halfway through dinner, Emma excused herself to take a phone call. Work always work, she said with a grimace that suggested this was a familiar pattern. And Lily turned to Michael with a suddenly serious expression. She thinks I don't know she's sad. Lily signed. But I can see it. She's sad because she can't talk to me like you can. Michael hesitated. He barely knew this child. Barely knew her mother. But there was something in Lily's eyes, a wisdom beyond her years, the kind that came from watching the world from outside it that made him want to answer honestly. I think, he signed slowly. Your mother loves you very much, and sometimes love is hard to show when you don't have the right words. Lily considered this. Then she signed, can you teach her? For a moment, Michael didn't know what to say. Emma returned from her phone call to find Michael and Lily with their heads bent together, signing something that made Lily giggle, actually giggle. A sound Emma heard so rarely that it stopped her in her tracks. She stood at the edge of the ballroom watching them and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope. It was hope. And she had learned long ago that hope was just disappointment waiting to happen. But Michael caught her eye and smiled. Not the polished smile of a colleague, but something warmer, something that included her, and before she could stop herself, she was smiling back. She walked toward them slowly, giving herself time to compose her face, to arrange her features into something that didn't betray how much this moment meant to her. Later that evening, after the party had wound down, and Lily had fallen asleep in the car, Emma found herself replaying the night's events with a strange sense of wonder. A stranger had made her daughter laugh. A stranger had bridged the gap that Emma had been trying to close for 3 years. She didn't know what to do with that information. Didn't know what it meant that she had felt more connected to Lily in those few hours than she had in months. But when her phone buzzed with a message from Michael Carson, a contact she didn't remember adding along with a note that read, let me know if you'd like Oliver and me to get coffee with you and Lily sometime. Emma didn't hesitate. She typed back yes before she could talk herself out of it. Then she sat in her parked car for a long time, watching her daughter sleep, wondering what she had just set in motion. The coffee date happened 3 days later at a small cafe near Central Park that had a play area in the back. Michael arrived first with Oliver, who immediately claimed a corner table and began working on a puzzle he had brought from home. At 9, Oliver was tall for his age, with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. Quiet and thoughtful in a way that had nothing to do with his hearing loss and everything to do with his personality. He had been nervous about meeting Lily. Michael could tell by the way he kept rearranging the puzzle pieces without actually connecting any of them. But he had also been curious. Another kid whose signs, he had said that morning, his hands moving with the same careful precision Michael had learned to recognize as excitement. "Do you think she'll like me?" Michael had promised him that she would, hoping he was right. Oliver looked up when Emma and Lily walked in, his gaze finding Lily with the immediate recognition of a child who understood what it meant to be different. There was a moment of stillness between them, an assessment that happened faster than words could capture. Then Oliver set aside his puzzle and signed a greeting. Not the formal hello he had been taught, but something more casual, something that said, "I see you. I know what it's like." Lily responded with visible relief, her whole body relaxing in a way Michael hadn't seen at the party. And within minutes, the two children had claimed the play area, their hands moving in animated conversation while the adults watched from nearby. They were comparing signs, Michael realized after a moment. Oliver was showing Lily his version of certain words, and Lily was showing him hers. Both of them giggling at the differences. It was the deaf equivalent of comparing accents. And watching him do it felt like watching something sacred unfold. "I didn't expect that," Emma admitted, her voice soft with surprise. Oliver can be shy with new people. It's different when you find someone who speaks your language. Emma turned to look at him. Really, look at him. And Michael had the sudden sense that she was seeing past his rumpled sweater and unpolished shoes to something underneath. He found himself straightening in his chair. "How did you learn?" she asked. "To sign so fluently." "Fear." Michael admitted when Oliver was first diagnosed, "I was terrified I wouldn't be able to communicate with my own son. So, I studied like my life depended on it because in a way it did." Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I've tried, God. I've tried, but it just doesn't. My hands don't work that way. My brain doesn't think in signs." Michael hesitated, then reached across the table to touch her hand just briefly. "It's not about talent. It's about time and it's about letting yourself make mistakes." Emma looked at him with something like surprise. "I'm not very good at mistakes." "No," Michael said gently. "I imagine you're not." The weeks that followed had a rhythm to them, a pattern that Michael fell into without quite meaning to. Coffee dates became regular occurrences every Saturday morning, then Wednesdays after school, then spontaneous meetups whenever their schedules aligned. Lily and Oliver became inseparable in the way of children who have found their people, developing their own private jokes and secret signs that neither parent could quite follow. And somewhere along the way, Michael and Emma became something more than acquaintances. Though he couldn't quite name what they were becoming, he noticed the small things first. The way Emma's face relaxed when she walked into a room where Lily was signing with Oliver. No longer the anxious watchfulness, but something softer, almost peaceful. The way she started texting him, questions about signs at odd hours, asking for clarification on grammar points that had confused her tutors for years, the way she laughed more now. A real laugh that transformed her whole face and made her look younger, less guarded, more like the woman she might have been if life had been gentler with her. And he noticed how Lily bloomed. The silent, resigned girl from the Christmas party was gone, replaced by a child who chatted constantly in sign, who made jokes Michael had to explain to Emma, who had started teaching her mother new words with the patient exasperation of a child who knew more than her parent. But he also noticed the harder things. The way Emma flinched when work called. The guilt that flashed across her face when she had to cut a conversation short. The way she deflected questions about herself, turning the conversation back to the children, to work, to anything but her own inner life. She was lonely, Michael realized. Possibly lonelier than he was, but she had built such careful walls around that loneliness that she barely seemed to know it was there. One evening, after the children had exhausted themselves at the park, Michael and Emma sat on a bench while Oliver and Lily dozed on the grass nearby. The sun was setting over the city, painting everything golden rose, and Emma looked more relaxed than Michael had ever seen her. She was beautiful, he thought, not just in the obvious ways, but in the tired lines around her eyes, in the way she watched her daughter sleep. In the fierce tenderness she tried so hard to hide. "You're different with them," Emma said suddenly. Michael blinked. "Sorry, with the kids. You're different than you are with adults. More open, more." She searched for the word yourself. Michael considered this. "Maybe I'm just more comfortable with kids. They're more honest." Emma turned to look at him. "Is that what you think I am? Dishonest?" "No," Michael said carefully. "I think you're careful. I think you've had to be." Emma was quiet for so long that Michael thought he had offended her. Then she said, "I wasn't always like this. I used to be softer. I think before what? Before I learned that softness gets you hurt." Michael didn't ask what had hurt her. He could see it in the way she held herself, in the walls she had built, in the way she watched the world with those careful grey eyes. Instead, he said, "Softness isn't weakness." And she said very quietly, "I know, but it's hard to remember sometimes." Lily's transformation was impossible to ignore. Teachers at her school commented on it, how engaged she had become in class, how willing to participate where before she had hidden in the background. Emma's mother, who visited from Connecticut with increasing frequency, remarked on it during every phone call. Even the usually reserved pediatrician noted that Lily seemed more confident, more communicative than she had been at her last appointment. "She's made a friend," Emma explained, knowing that the word friend didn't quite capture what Oliver had become to her daughter. But how could she explain that her 7-year-old had found a kindred spirit? Someone who understood her world in a way that Emma never fully would. She watched Lily teach Oliver new signs, watched them develop their own private jokes, and felt something complicated twist in her chest. Part of it was joy, pure uncomplicated joy at seeing her daughter happy. But part of it, and she hated herself for this, was jealousy. She had tried so hard to bridge the gap between herself and her daughter. Why had it been so easy for Michael? Emma knew she was being unfair. Michael had years of practice, a son who had taught him the language from childhood and ease with communication that came from hard-won experience. But knowing something intellectually didn't stop the small, shameful voice that whispered she would never be enough for Lily. That her daughter needed something Emma simply couldn't provide. She started pulling back, cancelling coffee dates with excuses that grew thinner each time. Making excuses about work, about travel, about obligations that didn't actually exist. Michael noticed, of course, he noticed. He noticed everything, but he didn't push. He just kept showing up, kept signing with Lily, kept being patient in a way that made Emma want to scream. "You're avoiding me," he said finally on an afternoon when Emma had tried to drop Lily off for a play date without coming inside. "I'm busy." "You're scared." Something about his directness, his refusal to pretend, cracked Emma's composure. "Yes," she admitted. "I'm scared of me, of what this is becoming, of what it means. That my daughter is happier with your son than she's ever been with me. That she has more conversations with you in an hour than she has with me in a week." Michael stepped closer. "That's not true." "It is true, and I don't know what to do with it." "So, you're going to push us away?" Emma felt tears prick at her eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. She didn't cry. She had trained herself not to cry years ago. "I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need time to figure it out." The call from Whitmore's London office came on a Thursday afternoon, just as Emma was leaving to pick up Lily from school. There was a crisis. The details didn't matter. There was always a crisis, and they needed her on a flight that evening. Emma stood in her office, phone pressed to her ear, and felt the familiar weight settle onto her shoulders. She could go. She had gone before many times, leaving Lily with the nanny service that specialized in deaf children. It would be fine. It was always fine. But for the first time, she hesitated. "Call Michael," some voice in her head whispered. "Ask him." The thought was terrifying, not because she doubted Michael's ability to care for Lily. She had seen enough to know he would be wonderful. But because asking felt like admitting something she wasn't ready to admit, that she needed him, that they needed him, that the walls she had built were crumbling, and she didn't know how to stop them. She called anyway. Michael answered on the second ring, and when Emma explained the situation, her voice more uncertain than she had ever heard it, he didn't hesitate. "Of course, bring her over whenever you need. She can stay with Oliver and me." Lily took the news with surprising equanimity. She had never spent a night away from Emma, had never been comfortable enough with anyone else to consider it. But when Emma explained that she would be staying with Michael and Oliver, Lily's face lit up. "Okay," she signed simply. Then with a glance at her mother, she added, "It's okay to go." "Well, be fine." Emma knelt down to her daughter's level, cupping her face in her hands. Then she hugged Emma fiercely, and Emma held on as long as she dared before letting go. The weekend was not what Michael had expected. He had anticipated awkwardness, the difficulty of caring for a child who wasn't his own, the adjustment of having another person in their carefully calibrated routine. Instead, he found easy companionship. Lily slotted into their routine as if she had always been there. Trading signs with Oliver over breakfast, helping Michael make sandwiches for lunch, falling asleep on the couch between both children during a movie marathon on Saturday night. She missed her mother. Michael could see it in the way she checked Emma's texts compulsively. In the way she asked him to help her compose video messages that she sent with increasing frequency. But she wasn't falling apart. She was coping the way children do when they feel safe. The way Oliver had learned to cope in those early difficult months after the divorce. Emma called every night, and Michael watched Lily's face transform when her mother's image appeared on the screen. They signed to each other for long minutes. Conversations that Michael didn't try to follow, giving them privacy while remaining nearby in case Lily needed him. On Sunday night, when Emma's face crumpled slightly as she signed that her flight had been delayed another day, Michael saw Lily reach out and touch the screen as if she could comfort her mother through the glass. "It's okay," she signed. "Michael's taking care of me." Emma's eyes found Michael's over Lily's shoulder, and she mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Michael nodded. Later, after Lily was asleep, Emma called again just for him. She sounded exhausted, wrung out in a way that had nothing to do with jet lag. "How was she really?" Emma asked. "Be honest." Honestly, she was great. She missed you, but she was happy. She felt safe. Emma was quiet for a long moment. "I've never left her with anyone who wasn't paid to watch her." "You have now." "I know," Emma whispered. "That's what terrifies me. And I don't know how to do that." Michael closed his eyes. "Then maybe we figure it out together." Emma came home on a Tuesday evening, her flight having been delayed twice more. Her patience worn to threads. She went straight to Michael's apartment, not even stopping at her own place to drop off her luggage. And when Michael opened the door, she could hear Lily and Oliver laughing somewhere inside. For a moment, she just stood there, taking in the warmth of the apartment, the smell of something cooking, the sound of her daughter's happiness. It hit her then, standing in that doorway. This was what she had been afraid of. Not that Lily would be unhappy without her, but that Lily would be happy. That her daughter would thrive in a space Emma hadn't created, surrounded by people Emma hadn't chosen, and that this thriving would somehow prove that Emma wasn't enough. But standing there listening to her daughter laugh, Emma felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Pure uncomplicated gratitude for this man who had opened his home to her daughter without hesitation, who had made Lily feel safe enough to be herself. Michael stepped aside to let her in, and she walked past him into the living room, where Lily was teaching Oliver an elaborate handshake that involved signs for secret words. The room was messier than Emma's apartment ever was. Pillows on the floor, art supplies scattered across the coffee table, a half-finished board game abandoned on the rug. It looked lived in. It looked like home. Lily spotted her mother and launched herself across the room, wrapping her arms around Emma's waist with a force that nearly knocked her over. "You're back," Lily signed, her face buried in Emma's stomach. "I'm back. I missed you so much." Lily looked up at her, grey eyes serious. "I missed you, too. But I had fun. Is that okay?" Something in Emma's chest cracked open. "Yes, baby. That's more than okay." Later, after Lily had shown Emma every drawing she had made, every game she had played, every sign she had learned from Oliver, Emma found Michael in the kitchen cleaning up from dinner. She stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him. He moved with easy efficiency, comfortable in his space in a way that Emma never quite was in her own home. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." Michael turned, dish towel in hand. "You already said that." "I know, but I mean it. I couldn't have." She paused, searching for words. "This wouldn't have been possible before." "Before what?" "Before you." Michael set down the towel and crossed to her, stopping close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Emma, I need you to know something. I'm not trying to replace you in Lily's life. I know that, do you? Because you looked terrified when you left, like you thought we might not be here when you got back." Emma felt tears threaten again, and this time she let them come. "I've never needed anyone before. Not like this." Michael reached up to brush a tear from her cheek. "Is that so terrible?" "Yes," she admitted. "And no, it's just new." December arrived with the first snow of the season, transforming the city into a winter wonderland that made the children giddy with excitement. Emma found herself counting down to the company Christmas party, not dreading it for once, but actually looking forward to it. A year ago, she had stood in that ballroom watching her daughter sit alone, wondering if things would ever get easier. Now, Lily was planning her outfit with the help of Oliver via video chat, debating the merits of red versus green velvet with the seriousness of a fashion executive. Michael had been invited as Emma's guest, a decision that had raised eyebrows among her colleagues. Emma Hayes didn't bring guests. Emma Hayes barely brought herself. But when Michael arrived at her apartment to pick up the children they had decided to ride together, a small intimacy that felt larger than it was, Emma found she didn't care what anyone thought. Oliver was wearing a clip-on tie that kept going crooked, and Lily was fussing over him with sisterly exasperation, and Michael was looking at Emma like she was something precious, something worth protecting. The party was different this year. Emma watched her daughter move through the crowd with confidence. Oliver at her side as interpreter and friend. She watched colleagues approach Lily and actually try to communicate, fumbling through basic signs that Michael had taught them in a quick crash course. She watched her daughter laugh, really laugh, head thrown back, soundless but joyful, and felt something settle in her chest. This is what it's supposed to feel like, she thought, connection, belonging, family. Near the end of the evening, Michael found her standing near the same corner where Lily had sat alone last year. He didn't say anything, just stood beside her and followed her gaze to where the children were showing off their signs to an admiring crowd. "She's different," Emma said softly. "More herself." "You are too," Michael replied. "Am I?" Michael turned to look at her. "When I first met you, you were holding yourself so tightly I thought you might shatter. Now you're breathing." Emma felt a laugh bubble up, surprising her. "Is that a compliment?" Michael smiled. "The highest." Emma thought she knew what family meant. She had grown up in a family, distant parents, a brother she rarely spoke to, a childhood defined by expectations and achievements. She had made her own family when she adopted Lily. A choice born from love, but executed with the same determination she applied to everything. But the family taking shape around her now was something different. Looser, warmer, more chaotic in ways that should have terrified her, but somehow didn't. Sunday dinners became a tradition. Not at restaurants, but in Michael's cramped apartment or Emma's too-large condo, the children helping to set the table while the adults argued amiably about whose turn it was to cook. Lily started spending weekends at Michael's place even when Emma was in town. Returning home with stories about pillow forts and pancake experiments and signs that Oliver had taught her. Oliver started asking Emma for business advice for the lemonade stand he wanted to start. Approaching her with the same formal seriousness he applied to everything, and Michael was there, not intruding, not pushing, just present in a way that Emma had never experienced from anyone. He didn't try to fix her. He didn't try to change her. He just saw her, all of her, including the parts she had spent years trying to hide. One night after the children were asleep and the apartment was quiet, Emma found herself sitting on Michael's couch, a glass of wine in her hand, watching him finish the dishes. She had been thinking about something Lily had signed earlier, a casual comment that had lodged in Emma's chest like a splinter. "Do you think they'll be okay?" she asked. "The kids, if this," she gestured vaguely, between them becomes something more. Michael dried his hands and came to sit beside her. "I think," he said carefully, "that they're already more than okay. They've found each other. Whatever happens with us, they have that. And what do you want to happen with us?" Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I want whatever you're willing to give. I'm not going to push you, Emma. You've been pushed enough." Emma set down her wine glass. "What if I'm willing to give more than I thought?" Michael's eyes searched her face. "Then I'll be here for as long as you want me." The second Christmas party came and went. And then New Year's. And then the long grey stretch of January that always made Emma want to hibernate. But this January was different. This January she had people to hibernate with. They didn't rush anything. There was no grand declaration, no formal definition of what they were becoming. Michael still had his apartment, Emma still had her condo, and the children still split their time between the two. But the boundaries were softer now, more permeable. Toothbrushes appeared in bathrooms, keys were exchanged. Lily started calling Michael's place our other house. And Oliver started asking Emma to sign his permission slips because she was better at forging his dad's signature, a skill that made Michael pretend to be offended and Emma pretend to be innocent. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and longer days. And Emma found herself doing something she hadn't done in years, planning for the future. Not the corporate future, not the quarterly projections and 5-year plans that had dominated her life for so long. A real future with birthday parties and summer vacations, and maybe someday a house with a backyard where the children could play. She brought it up to Michael on a warm evening in April, sitting on the fire escape of his apartment while the kids watched a movie inside. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what comes next." Michael waited, patient as always. "I have a lot of money," Emma continued. "And you have Oliver and I have Lily, and together we have whatever this is." "Family," Michael said simply. Emma felt her throat tighten. "Yeah, family. So, what do you want to do with it?" Emma looked at him, at this man who had walked into her life at a Christmas party and quietly, steadily changed everything. "I want to build something," she said, "with you. Something real, something that lasts." Michael smiled. And in that smile, Emma saw the future she had been too afraid to imagine. "Then let's build it." They moved into the new house on a Saturday in June. A modest brownstone in Brooklyn with a backyard just big enough for a garden and a tree that was perfect for climbing. The movers had finished hours ago, but nobody had bothered to unpack. Instead, they sat in the empty living room, surrounded by boxes, eating pizza off paper plates while the evening light streamed through the windows. The house smelled like fresh paint and possibility, and through the window, Emma could see the tree in the backyard, its branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. Lily and Oliver had claimed their rooms adjacent, connected by a bathroom they would have to share, and were currently engaged in a serious negotiation about shelf space that involved elaborate signs and occasional dramatic sighing. They had already decided that Oliver would take the room with the bigger closet because he had more books and Lily would take the one with the window seat because she liked to read in natural light. These were the kinds of compromises children made, Emma realized when they were becoming siblings. Emma watched them, marveling at how natural it seemed. How right this is chaos, she said to Michael, gesturing at the boxes, the children, the pizza grease on her designer blouse. This is family, Michael corrected. Same thing. Emma laughed and the sound surprised her not because laughter was new, but because it came so easily now. She hadn't known she could be this version of herself. The version that didn't need to control everything, that could sit in a mess and feel at peace. Michael reached over and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. No regrets? He asked. Emma considered the question seriously, because she owed him that. She thought about everything she had given up to get here, the image of herself as someone who didn't need anyone. The armor she had worn for so long she had forgotten it wasn't skin. She thought about everything she had gained. A partner who saw her, a daughter who was thriving, a son who wasn't hers by blood, but who had claimed a piece of her heart anyway. A family that had grown not from obligation or duty, but from something simpler and more terrifying. Love. No regrets, she said, and meant it. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Emma stood at the window of the master bedroom, looking out at the backyard. The moonlight silvered the grass, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and then fell silent. Michael came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? Emma leaned back into him, feeling his warmth against her back, solid and real. That night at the Christmas party, she said, when you signed hello to Lily. Michael was quiet for a moment. I almost didn't go, you know, to the party. I almost stayed home. I'm glad you didn't. Me, too. They stood there together watching the moonlight paint shadows on the lawn. And Emma felt something she had chased her whole life without ever catching. Peace. Not the absence of conflict or the silence of solitude, but real peace. The kind that came from being exactly where you were supposed to be, with exactly the right people. From somewhere down the hall, a light flicked on. Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Oliver, a sleepy shadow behind her. We can't sleep, Lily signed. Can we stay with you? Emma looked at Michael. Michael looked at Emma. Then they both smiled and opened their arms. The children tumbled into the room, into the bed, into the family they were still becoming. And in the quiet that followed, not empty silence, but the full silence of people who don't need words to be understood, Emma finally knew what it meant to belong. Sign language had brought them together, but love, patient and persistent, had made them whole. Outside, the first fireflies of summer blinked in the darkness. Inside, 4 people breathed together, dreaming the same dreams. It wasn't the ending Emma had planned. It was better. It was real.